I'd like to welcome on stage Dean Bubley, Mark Newman, Mark Dowd, and Tony Poulos, if they're all still here. Are you all still here?
Yeah, all here.
Come on, quick, jump up. You've all been sitting there doing nothing all day. You can sit next to whoever you like. So, as I think I mentioned at the very beginning, one of the raison d'etre for setting up the telco debate 3 or 4 years ago was that the range of independent analysts who are out there now, who are offering, as we say, more outspoken. You've heard people contributing from the floor. Obviously, we compete with a lot of the big firms, with the Gartners and IDCs, because our opinion is sought by many of you in the room and many players. So I thought it'd be a great way to ask the panel here, and I have one apology from Caroline Gabriel, who unfortunately her mother was taken ill, so she had to run off to go and look after her mother. She would have contributed a lot to the last 5G debates, and we will get her input to the summary document as well. But I thought it'd be great to ask the 4 panelists what they've heard of today, what their key thing was they took away from today, and secondly, was there anything that they missed from today? So, Dean, I know you've got to go soonest, so let's get you up and started. Rev you up a little bit.
Okay, so I quite liked what I've heard about some of the pragmatism around service opportunities for telcos on things like IoT. On the other hand, what I haven't heard is any discussion of what is a telco anyway. And I think that one of the questions that's sort of lurking around the room is, I tend to phrase it as, is telecoms too important to leave up to telcos? And I think, for example, on 5G, I think it's going to be critical that we have private 5G networks, because of most of the use cases, particularly on critical IoT or massive IoT, are unsuitable for traditional cellular operators. And so I think we probably need to have a political discussion about things like shared spectrum ownership and a variety of other things there. So I haven't heard. There's been a couple of mentions of what I call the sort of cool next set of technologies, which are the ones which can add value to sort of connectivity and identity. I've been looking into blockchain and artificial intelligence and VR and AR recently, among others. And I think it's the intersections of those with the telecoms domain which will allow for differentiation, because there are so many possible intersections that no one, doesn't matter whether it's Vodafone or Google, can cover all of them. So I think that it's those intersections where the value will lie.
Thank you, Dean. Very, very, very succinct and concise. Mark Dowd, I know in the past we've talked a lot about the boardroom, and I introduced this notion of boardroom banter. I'm not sure if boardroom banter ever exists. How do you see things from that higher level within the discussion during the course of the day?
Well, I've seen some things here today which I haven't really seen at other events. I'm not a telecoms person per se, and what I'm interested in is how businesses change. And I was really excited to hear about the exponential areas that you're working with. I thought the idea of 1.5 customers a day, if you said that in almost any other industry, people would fall off their chairs. It's great. It's wonderful.
1 million.
Million, sorry, well, even more so, sorry. 1.5 million, that's a big thing. And that's where I believe that a lot of the world is going, is this exponential side. The other side of that was where you are and how that fits with what you do. Because we also talked a little bit about the size of WhatsApp, the fact that it's 90 people and serving hundreds of millions of people. And that made me think, I wonder how that contrasts to your companies and to your industry. And it seemed a little bit different in some ways. And really what that comes back to, for me, is about the business models that you're thinking about for the future. When we were talking about the IoT in particular, it seemed to me that really you were looking at different business models and getting very excited about them, and I think that's really a good thing. However, are those business models that you really will own? And I take the point just made that not Google and Amazon can't own them all and won't own them all, but how do you become part of that conversation in a situation where the data's just flowing and it may be encrypted? You don't necessarily know what it is. How do you actually get in there and do that? I'd be careful of a conspiracy of complexity, as Martin said. You know, you need to actually try to simplify a lot of what's going into this. You know, the fact that you never kill products, as Alex said earlier, that radical simplification is something which you really need to be considering. And a lot of other industries are doing that as well. And I guess last and not least, I heard a couple of mentions about people and talent. And I think that really is the important bit. It's, you know, I'm an old man, effectively, and you know, we've got to be careful that everybody brings in the talent that can actually revitalise the industry and make it, push it forward.
You suggest you can't teach old dogs new tricks?
Well,
Talking of which, Tony Poulos.
I was having to go last, actually, Chris. I've the couple of points that came up earlier on today. We talked about digitisation and automation. You know, making things better. And making us more creative, I think, was the point that was made earlier on. But it also means that a lot of people are going to be out of work. And the thing that keeps coming back to me is if people are going to lose their jobs because industries become digitised, they're the people that are buying the products and services that the digitisers are selling. And if they're not employed, they're not going to be able to buy them. So we want to be very careful that we don't go too far down one route and end up not having a market to sell to. Also, this talk about virtual reality and augmented reality, I'm still having trouble with normal reality. And I'm not sure if I'm going to fit into that augmented reality world, although sometimes my wife wishes I was part of that world. One thing that came out today that really keeps hammering me is that we come to these events regularly and we hear telcos talking about things that they want to do and want to be, but never seem to quite get there. It's a bit of a worry. It's becoming a worry. And I wrote a few notes, and it'll only take me 1 minute, Chris. Telcos should learn from the Trump phenomenon. Now, I'd hate to mention that guy's name, but the Trump phenomenon works like this. You make outrageous statements, you go with your own gut feel, you ignore advice from everyone around you, and you bully everyone. And that seems to get things on the road, seems to get things to work. And you just, anyone that gets in the road or annoys you, you just go past them. So, like digital players, start by telling the regulators to take a running jump. We should do what you want to and need to do to survive and let them challenge you. We keep kowtowing to all the regulators, everyone telling us what we should do as an industry, whereas and I hate the word over-the-top players, Dean and I both hate it, but those digital service providers are basically doing what they're wanting to do unregulated and nobody's questioning them. So why aren't we the same? And if you were strong enough and cocky enough, you might just get away with it. So the other thing is that we're really too busy competing with each other. Maybe all the telcos in the UK should actually get together and go to the regulator in one mass and say, we're not doing it, we don't agree with you, or the government. This is what we're going to do with 5G, take it or leave it. We're spending the money on it, you're not investing any money. Why don't we take control of our destiny as a group rather than as a bunch of competing rabble, which is what we appear to be to the rest of the world.
As ever, insightful and enthusiastic. So Mark, obviously one of the more recent, welcome to the independent analyst community. What did you take away from what you've heard today and what did you not hear?
So I thought it was interesting when you spoke about this morning about what people discuss in the boardroom. And the reality is that in the boardroom, people already spend time talking about what we've been talking about today. They're far more focused on some of the key shareholder issues. I mean, I spend a lot of time reading the equity research from the banks, and the banks have a very different view of where the industry is at from where we are today. They see it as being largely utility business. IoT, they hadn't made the connection particularly between IoT and telecoms operators. They see telco as being a simple business, utility business. They focus on level of competition. They focus on regulation. I think sometimes we overcomplicate where we are at as a business. So that's one point. And the second point I would make in terms of picking up other people, in terms of simplicity, we talk a lot about legacy processes, legacy products. Clearly, simplifying the business model should come first. I mean, how many price plans does Netflix has? Netflix has, virtually one price plan. So our telco is brave enough to actually sort of simplify their price. And I know the reasons why you don't do it, which is because, well, so-and-so won't be happy that bought this price plan in 1999. But actually, you've got to do it because so much of the time of telco is spent business as usual. Business as usual takes up the time of the whole of the IT department. There's too much business as usual in the business today. I really like the conversation. I really like the presentation from Matthew Hare at GigaClear. I love the simplicity of your business. It's such a simple business to run, and how much time is spent in different departments of telcos thinking about all the different customer groups, all the different new strategies you could pursue. Telco it's a pretty simple business what we have today. And as you said before, Tony, Telco's been trying to do all this new stuff for years, and we've been scattergun approach to all these new opportunities. Yep. And we've got to stop, we've got to focus on what we do best. And actually, it is about building a network and the best network. Yes. It's also about regulation as well. I think we forget regulation. I believe that telecoms is a sacrificial lamb of regulators globally. I feel we're in a terrible situation because telcos will not allow, so regulators won't allow us to put up prices. They won't allow us to consolidate. Why is that? Well, it's because, unfortunately, we give the impression of being an incredibly profitable industry. We still are fairly profitable, but it's not really growing. We need to demonstrate that the benefits to society that we give by giving employment, by providing infrastructure, and stop having stupid adverts with Kevin Bacon walking down the street with a mobile phone. Because that doesn't help. That simply doesn't help us to educate about we're an infrastructure business, but the consumer and government media doesn't realise we're an infrastructure business, and we have to change the perception of what we are.
I'd agree, but I'd go a bit further and say there needs to be a hard line between infrastructure and services and content. And I think things like network slicing are completely the wrong direction. I think that needs to be a leaf taken out of the oil industry where you have upstream and downstream, and you dig oil out of the ground in one part of the world and you turn it into petrol somewhere else, and you've got this commodity layer of the oil price in the middle, which means you're counter-cyclical. So if the oil price is high, then you make money on the production. If it's low, then you make money on selling retail products. And I think that interestingly seems to be what AT&T's perhaps doing with its acquisition of Time Warner, rather than this incredibly convoluted, heavy-duty machinery of NFV and virtualization with their eComp architecture, which sounds like a great academic white paper, but not something that I'm expecting to actually deliver.
It's interesting.
Value.
I mean, I think on the point of the discussion about value of connectivity, and I think we all agree that this industry has destroyed value of connectivity via pricing strategies and competition. I think telecoms operators are continuing to help destroy that value because connectivity is becoming invisible behind services. So we see telecoms operators wanting to go into the content market. Connectivity becomes an enabler, but there's no value attached to it. It's because we don't really know what language to use to describe and to promote the value of connectivity. But we have to, because the cost is so huge that if there's no value there, then how are we going to invest in future networks?
Correct.
And it's interesting, I think, and Phil Jordan referred to it earlier on, that their new CEO referred to their actually using data to give something back to the customer. Yeah, it's probably a bit of a gimmick, but actually, I think understanding the relative role. Now, by the way, I've always agreed that network infrastructure and services should be separated. Yeah. I argued it 25 years ago with the OECD, where they threw me out of the room at the time. That we shouldn't be wasting resource. We talked a lot about resource in economics with Mark Gregory first thing. We shouldn't be wasting resource on building parallel things that we don't necessarily need. So the optimal network may well be in the long run, perhaps not renationalising, but allowing more of that consolidation. And I think the regulators, in many respects, do not contribute to the discussion. We probably have time for one question, if anyone's got a question for the analysts. But of course, we are going to move upstairs and open several bottles of wine. That's just for me. You can have a glass of wine if you like. But we are going to move upstairs. So is there one quick question, or should we draw it all to a close and move upstairs?
That was...
It's the only event in the world I've been to where people talk to a box. and you got away with it today.
You should get out more, mate.
That's brilliant.
I've seen it. I don't think we do have any more questions.
I didn't think so, but I thought I'd better be polite and ask, because we've sort of tried to be polite all day. I think the whole notion of what we've been through in debating the topics, I hope it's given you, we say many people come because they quite like the notion of hearing different opinions. You know, we tend to go to events and we hear this marketing pitch from the vendors, from many analyst firms. And I think the value that you get from what we've seen today, thank you all for your contributions.
And thanks to Chris and Graham, it's been brilliant, so thank you very much.
Thank you.